If you get into the market with a 2-bedroom unit or a townhouse or even a cheap house, if you use that rent investment strategy,
I don't see that happening.
it's not really giving you any sort of stepping stone to go and buy a family house in the future, is it?
Yeah, and there's unlimited spots.
Okay. The thing is with that, that's going to encourage a lot more people to be buying, so they need to keep up with that housing supply.
All I think of every election time, you've got two really shit options, but you have to pick one.
Yeah, pick one. It's just providing the money for infrastructure for developers to come through.
That's a lot. I did some research into that. The only time that we have in Australia we've built more than that, I think, was in 2017, and they built 253,000 homes. Yes.
And if they don't keep up with that housing supply, like the required 240 homes per year,
this policy will build those facilities so that the private investors can build those developments.
Yeah.
Currently is really hard. Mum and dad can't help everyone, you know what I mean? Like, and saving up $50,000 is really hard for anyone.
You need a property paid off for when you retire. You don't want to retire with a healthy super but still need to rent a property.
Just research. Don't just watch a TikTok. Welcome back to Talk Property to Me. My name is Brad East.
I'm Aaron Downie, and today we're talking about the Labor and Coalition housing policies.
Yeah, so basically what we're going to do is discuss what Labor and Liberal are proposing for their housing plans and sort of unpack that a little bit and see what they're both proposing in a sort of easy to
Very timely.
unpack. Yeah, very timely, and who doesn't like talking about politics? Every election that comes up, it just reminds me of that South Park episode. You know, you got to choose between the giant douche and the turd sandwich. It's all I think of every election time. You've got two really shit options, but you have to pick one.
Yeah, pick one.
Wish there was something in the middle, but that's another discussion for another day. But
yeah, we're not talking politics. It's purely housing.
Next week we're talking religion. So let's get straight into it. So obviously housing and affordability is a really big topic at the moment, hence why both parties have put a lot into it. And to be completely honest, I think both parties have got some really good policies here.
Yeah, both great options.
Yeah, some are a little bit ambitious than others, which we'll talk about today as well. But overall, I think they're both okay. You know, I think if either got in, they're still going to be good for first home buyers and affordability. Yeah. So it's not doom or gloom either way, in my opinion. Yeah. Again, the douchebag and the turd sandwich.
And that's really the whole theme of it, isn't it? It's not only like the affordability issue, but it's really tailored towards the first home buyer market.
It is, because that's an easy win as well, as far as politics go. You never want to make it easy for investors, because they're evil. You know, first home buyers are good. You know, they're good. So there is a big focus on that. Yeah. But putting more homes in the market is never a bad idea, in my opinion. Yeah. So we'll look at Labor's first one. So they're proposing that they're going to be pushing for 1.2 million homes to be built by 2029. So let's unpack that a little bit. So that's 20,000 homes per month, or 240,000 homes per month. Per year. I don't see that happening. That's a lot. I did some research into that. The only time that we have in Australia we've built more than that, I think, was in 2017, and they built 253,000 homes.
The thing is, even if it was achievable, and we've discussed this before on another episode, it's just enabling. Yeah. It's just providing the money for infrastructure for developers to come through. The thing is, if it's not feasible for a developer, the projects aren't going to go ahead.
Correct. And there has to be an incentive. You can't just say, we want this, go do it. What are you going to do to actually promote this to happen? You know, and I don't really understand that one. You know, that's a goal. It's a good goal, but it's not really a policy. No. So the next one is $10 billion for 30,000 social or affordable homes. This is all Labor, sorry. And $1.5 billion for enabling infrastructure. So that's your sewer and services, all those sort of thing, roads. Yeah. So not bad. It's okay.
And that's the thing, that's great. And we pulled apart that $1.5 billion on infrastructure.
It didn't. That $1.5 billion didn't allow for many houses. I think it was 25,000 homes in
one of
memory.
the suburbs. It was going to enable 40 homes.
Yeah, so that's that sort of covers 1 month out of the 20,000 per month they need. So yeah, look, that one's a bit of a a wait and watch. Yeah. Let's see what actually happens with that. So home ownership assistance, so the Help to Buy scheme, this is one that's been lingering for years and years now. So this was Labor's proposed first home buyer scheme in 2022. Now we're in 2025. It still hasn't rolled out. They're proposing that it's going to roll out later this year, which they also said last year and the year before that. All they've done in that period is piggyback off the back of the Liberals' policy, which is the first home loan deposit scheme, which is the 5% scheme, which in my opinion is much better than the Help to Buy scheme. We've talked about it in a previous episode. I don't like the thoughts of co-ownership with government.
No, not at all. I mean, it helps you get into the market, but it's just fractional ownership of a property.
Yes.
And it's not giving you really a good foundation to try and go and then upgrade in the future. If you get into the market with a 2-bedroom unit or a townhouse or even a cheap house, if you use that rent investment strategy, it's not really giving you any sort of stepping stone to go and buy a family house in the future, is it?
And it's kind of forcing people into a bit of a position here because someone commented on the last episode saying that I'd prefer own 70% of a house than none. Fair enough. But what I see happening here, because it's linked back to your income. So once you hit a certain income cap, you are then required to refinance and pay the government back their 30%.
Yeah.
So what I see happening here, you get used to 70% of a loan.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you get a pay rise and now your mortgage has gone up 30%.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden you've bitten off more than you can chew all of a sudden.
I mean, and we've said it before, it is something to help people get into the market, but it's not a great initiative, really.
No, you're better off, in my opinion, going in at 5% of something that you can afford right now.
Yeah.
And then letting the capital growth take it to
100%.
to where it needs to be. Instead of co-ownership with a government, hitting these price caps. I think it's all going to be linked through single touch payroll, so through the ATO.
Yeah.
It's going to set off triggers. You'll probably get a letter in the mail going, you've got 90 days or some crap.
Yeah.
You know, I don't like it, but that's just my opinion. And there's only 10,000 spots per year that they're proposing for this. From experience with the previous, when the first home loan deposit scheme came out, they did 10,000 and they were gone in a month.
Yeah. It's nothing.
It's not good. They are proposing to continue the first home loan deposit scheme, which is the first home guarantee, I think they're calling it.
Yeah.
So that's a 5% deposit, no lender's mortgage insurance. The government is essentially replacing lender's mortgage insurance. So they're guaranteeing that 15%. So what they're saying is if we give 5% no LMI, so if the house is worth $500K, the person defaults, doesn't pay their mortgage, and we have to sell it for $450, the government's going to pay the lender that 50 grand.
Risk. Yeah.
That's it. They know that that's unlikely given the current property market increases.
Yeah.
It's very unlikely that there will be a dip in those prices. So it's kind of a no-brainer. Like that's, you're guaranteeing something that's going to increase in price.
I mean, the proposed changes with removing income caps,
they're huge.
That's massive.
Yeah. So this is one of the biggest things that has really affected some of my applicants that I'm helping is the property price, the income cap. So I think it's 125K for an individual or 200K for a couple.
Yeah.
But anything less than that, you're not buying a great deal anyway.
Exactly.
So removing those income caps is huge, in my opinion. They're increasing the property caps as well, because I think they were like, $950 to buy something in Sydney. Good luck. That gets you a single car garage in Enmore.
You can buy a unit like that or buy a house in Western Sydney or Campbelltown, but
increasing it. I think it's still, gone up to, I think from memory it's gone up to 1.5 mil.
Yeah. Okay.
So you're in the ballpark.
Yeah, for sure.
Especially you add the no income caps and then increasing those property caps as well.
Yeah.
And there's unlimited spots.
Okay.
So in my opinion, this first 5% deposit scheme trumps the Help to Buy scheme
massive
tenfold.
Yeah.
So anyone looking to buy a home, if Labor does get in, I'd be sticking with that 5% deposit scheme.
Yeah.
It's quite I really like these changes, to be perfectly honest.
But the thing is, with that, that's going to encourage a lot more people to be buying. So they need to they need to keep up with that housing supply.
Yes.
And if they don't keep up with that housing supply, like they're, the required 240 homes per year, well, then it's going to put more pressure on the market.
This policy will drive the property market crazy.
Yeah.
It really will.
Yeah.
So they're also proposing $54 million for modular housing.
We spoke about that in another episode.
Yep. Take it as you will.
We'll actually link that in the episode if someone wants to listen to it.
Yeah. So free TAFE for construction skills.
Yep.
I don't mind that.
I mean, we do need labour.
Yep. So I don't mind that. So you can go do a apprenticeship and not have a help debt or HEX debt or whatever the thing is at the end. I don't mind that. And they're banning foreign purchase of existing homes for 2 years. So basically, foreign investors can only build and buy new.
Yeah.
Not bad.
Yeah.
I'll look at that whole policy and it's not a bad thing. If they got in and that's what we had to work with, I'd be pretty happy.
If it actually went ahead.
Yes.
But like we said, the Help to Buy scheme's been sitting there for 3 years.
Yeah, it's coming next year. So we'll go on to Liberal or Coalition. So they've really upped that 1.5 billion in infrastructure up to 5 billion.
Yeah, which is huge.
So basically the way I see the both policies, Labor's really built on government investment and Liberals more about building the infrastructure so that private investment comes in.
Yeah.
So they're spending the 5 billion on infrastructure to enable,
which is just great for business owners as well.
Correct.
And then employees and the rest of it.
So then basically, you might have a development that's proposed somewhere, but they can't do that because there's not enough sewerage plants or not enough roads or power. This policy will build those facilities so that the private investors can build those developments.
Yeah.
The home ownership, this one I really like. The next one is mortgage interest tax deductions for first home buyers that build a new property.
Yeah, which is a great incentive because we need first home buyers in the market and we need new homes.
Yeah.
So why not incentivize them to do that?
That's $11,000 worth of, or up to $11,000 worth of deductions per year.
Yeah.
That's big.
The thing is with that, when you're looking at like built up cities, like all of the capitals or even major regional areas across Australia, there's not a lot of land for the new homes.
Yeah.
So it is, say Newcastle, you're probably buying out, Maitland, Thornton, Cessnock, all of those areas. Sydney, you're buying obviously in Western Sydney, surrounding suburbs.
It's not a bad thing anyway.
No, exactly. We need it.
Build those outer skirts. And that's we talked about it in the previous policy, that it's sort of a hope and wish for these properties. This will promote building. There's no two ways about it.
I mean, the state government's already legislated changes for zoning laws across the state.
But then you mix this with the next policy, which is the superannuation access, which I believe is also for new builds. So you can pull up to $50,000 as a first home buyer to purchase a home.
Yeah.
I think from memory it was for new builds, but that's huge. I remember during...
Can you use both of these? So can you pull 50,000 and then deduct as well?
Yes.
That's massive.
So you're using that as your deposit.
Yeah.
So you add those two together and that will promote a lot of building.
Yeah.
Because let's face it, saving up a deposit currently is really hard.
And that's the thing, that housing supply, that $5 billion worth of infrastructure, combined with that home ownership assistance, they just complement each other.
Yeah. And there's your 5% deposit for $1 million build.
Yeah.
Instantly.
Yeah.
Mum and dad can't help everyone, what I mean? Like, and saving up $50,000 is really hard for anyone. So those two together I really like.
Yeah.
I think that's going to really promote building, which is good. The 5% deposit scheme will remain similar, but they are expanding eligibility. Okay. Don't have too much information on that, but I imagine it will be something similar to what...
5%. Like you said, withdraw the 50K. There's your 5% from $1 million.
I remember back on that superannuation, I remember during COVID, when it first hit, maybe anyone could pull 20, I think it was 20K out.
It was 2 lots of 10.
So you had two types of people. You had people that pulled the 20 grand out and went and bought a boat.
Yeah.
Or you had the others that pulled the 20 grand out, matched it with their partner and bought a home.
Yeah.
I had, like, no joke, hundreds of people do it.
Yeah.
Basically, they were pulling you weren't technically allowed to do it, but they were pulling the money out, sitting it in an account for 3 months.
Yeah.
And then it's genuine savings.
Yeah.
And then they're applying for homes.
I think I pulled it out and bought CBA at the dip.
Yeah. So it's smart people were doing it and investing in it. And I have no issue with pulling superannuation out if it's getting invested into property.
Yeah.
Because it's exactly what you're going to do with a self-managed super fund anyway.
You need a property paid off for when you retire. You don't want to retire with a healthy super but still need to rent a property.
Yeah, all these boats that people bought are worth nothing now, but the ones that did buy homes, they're killing it.
Yeah.
You know, they went from never, no deposit, all of a sudden they had, 40 grand combined.
Yeah.
That was enough because that did actually match up with the 5% deposit scheme as well.
Yeah.
So it was brilliant. So I do really like that. The home guarantee scheme, the 5% deposit, we'll see how that comes.
Yeah. Construction and regulation. So freeze changes to National Construction Code to keep building costs low.
Yeah.
So it's just trying to stimulate that housing supply to sort of work with that infrastructure spend that they're.
Well, that's one of the reasons why people aren't building at the moment. It's too expensive. You compare a build.
Too much red tape as well.
Yeah, you build a house now compared to the same house getting built just before COVID. You're 40% more in some cases.
Yeah.
Which is ridiculous. And that's literally just cost of building.
Which is good, with the Labor government incentivising people to do, those TAFE courses and get trades into the market because we need good tradesmen as well.
Big one here, relaxed lending rules. So I'll explain that one. So what they're proposing at the moment, there's a 3% buffer on assessment rates. So that means if you got a 6%, you're applying for a 6% rate.
Yeah.
They calculate your ability to repay that on 9%, so 3% higher. The reason that was originally introduced was to allow for rates to go up.
Yeah.
So that was very applicable when rates were 2%. They were assessing it at 5%.
But the thing is, what happened during COVID, I believe, not only did we have the cheapest money on offer ever before with, fixed rates at 1.9%, I think they also had an assessment rate back then at 1%, wasn't it?
5.5.
Was it?
Was the base.
Okay.
That was the minimum. But even then, the rates are above 5.5 now.
Exactly.
But saying that, 9%, do we think rates will ever get to that?
I mean, I think the lowering that serviceability threshold is needed.
100%. So what they're proposing, Liberals proposing, is they're going to reduce that to 2%.
Okay.
So prior to COVID, it was 2.5%.
Yeah.
So
some banks have already taken that in internal policy, haven't they? CBA.
So some are for internal for refinancing. They're doing a 1% buffer.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was to combat that. They're calling it mortgage prison. So you're locked in at a good rate during COVID.
Yeah.
And then banks slowly decrease their discounts, and all of a sudden you're on 8%, but you've got no serviceability to move, and they know that.
If you're pulling $50,000 out of your super, if you're using a 5% deposit, and they're lowering that serviceability buffer, it is increased risk for everyone on board. So,
100%,
it's needed, but they're taking on a lot of risk by doing all of those things.
Yep. So, again, they're proposing a foreign buyer ban, and they're also, which is another good one I like, is they're reducing immigration. We can't keep filling the bucket.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You've got to pull that back.
I mean, we do need immigration for other things, but as it relates to housing, it's putting too much pressure on everything.
It is. Immigration's a good thing for the economy.
Yeah.
But not at this time.
Yeah.
Maybe let's let our economy calm itself down a bit.
Yeah.
Keep immigration levels a little bit lower. I think they're at the highest they've ever been.
Yeah. Our economy's been propped up by immigration.
Correct. Yeah, it's keeping it going at the moment. But that some of these changes will promote the economy in other ways.
Yeah.
So I guess
case study.
Yeah. So that was basically the case study is someone earning 120K purchases at the 650 new build for the mortgage tax deduction.
Yeah.
So under Liberals policy, So basically, they're able to claim, I think it was 11,000, not 12,000.
It was 11,000.
11,000.
Yeah. Their mortgage interest is close to 40 grand per year, but then deducting $11,000 of it.
So potentially saving $55,000 over 5 years.
Yeah.
Which is huge.
Yeah.
So again, that's probably my highlight out of all of them. If I was to, try and do an unbiased wrap up of it, I think that Liberals' policy is a little bit stronger using the superannuation and the build.
We need the infrastructure spend as well.
Yeah. I think you add those together, they're saying, all right, we're going to put more infrastructure in so you can build more shit.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. Because at the moment, that's one of the biggest restrictions to new housing estates is there's just nothing there available. So that helps that you can pull 50 grand out of your super to help with a deposit, and also for the first 5 years claim that as a tax deduction.
Yeah.
Which helps a lot with your cash flow.
Do we know how that tax deduction then affects your property in terms of capital gains tax in the future?
It'd still be owner occupied.
Yeah.
So
you would hope so.
Yeah. Yeah. I doubt they would pull that, but it is government. You never know. Surprise.
Yeah.
You now have to pay us a tax on the tax you didn't pay.
11 grand, that's massive.
That's a big deduction.
Yeah.
That's quite a good deduction each year, and most employees struggle to find deductions of more than $1,000 a year. All of a sudden, you got 11,000 you can throw in there.
Yeah.
So you get a fair chunk of that back each year. Yeah. You can also do tax variations so that you get that cash flow each month instead or each week.
Yeah.
But that's something you talk to your accountant about. So as we said, Labor's policy, in a summary, Labor's policy is really about direct government involvement. So, ownership. They want to own part of the property. They want to be really involved in it. Coalition is private sector. So they're really investing in, building the infrastructure so private sector can build those things instead.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. What's your thoughts? Who are you backing?
I've already voted. I voted early. And I've got a legitimate excuse. My wife's pregnant, about to pop. But I've already voted. I went with the Liberal government. And I think I recommend everyone do the Vote Compass. I think it's something provided by the ABC, is it?
Maybe, yeah.
It's a bunch of questions. You won't be able to answer a lot of the questions because it's about energy and defence and all of these other matters. But that's a really good thing to do to know where you're at, whether and what government you should vote for.
I think my biggest thing is just research. Don't just watch a TikTok and go, I really like that
and listen
guy.
To us and then
don't listen to a podcast and think that's what I'm going to do. Podcasters don't know anything. But, do some research, look at the policies and see what actually fits what you want as an individual, not what you think socially you should be voting for.
Yeah.
Just vote
and
for
that's why I recommend doing that Vote Compass, because you can take advice from TikTok or podcasts or even the mass media outlets, but they've got an agenda. Everyone's got an agenda. Like I just said, I voted for the Liberal government. So go and do your own research. And
one thing to keep in mind as well, if Liberal or Labor get in power, nothing substantial is going to change. Your daily life is going to stay the same.
Exactly.
The world will not end either way. And we've seen it. I've seen it, for as long as I can remember. They have all these big plans and big promises. They get in power and they do nothing. Literally. They look at the Help to Buy scheme. That's 3 years later and we're still kicking it down the road.
I'm sure that it's only on a pause at the moment, the Trump tariffs, but that happened and now we're just living life and everyone's sort of forgotten about it.
Yeah, 3 weeks ago the world was going to end.
And now it's just, it is what it is.
Yeah, it's all, bit of a beat up, a lot of it. But again, make some informed decisions. Don't just vote for who you think is more popular. But that's it for today. And that's enough politics for me for a day. But,
for a month?
Yeah. We'll talk about, after the election, we'll talk about whoever wins, we'll talk about their policies in more detail.
Yeah, we'll go through each in more detail.
Yep. All right, that's it for today.
Awesome.
Thanks for jumping on.
See you in the next one.